Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest episode of the podcast for Toronto Realtors. Today, we have a super special guest from within the Keller Williams organization. We have Lorraine Jordan. Now, Lorraine, before I give you the floor here for a moment, just want to gas you up a little bit. Lorraine has been the number one agent across the entire Keller Williams organization in Canada. She's also consistently ranked among the top 100 Keller Williams agents around the world, which obviously Keller Williams being the largest real estate brokerage in the world, that's the best place to do it. Really seen a tremendous amount of success. And the reason I wanted to get you on is because not only are you seeing things obviously through the lens of Keller Williams, but you're the top of your game, you're the top of the real estate market. And to understand what's happening right now in the market, everything with the trade wars and Trump's tariffs, I think we want to get those insights from you to see not only what it means for us, but what we can do moving forward and how we can not only survive through these turbulent times, but actually thrive. So Lorraine, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you for asking me. I think one of the other things that's important is just I've been around a long time and I'm still actively selling. Like I've averaged 100 sales a year myself for years and years and years. So I'm still out there doing listing appointments. I'm still working with some buyers. So I'm not just telling you what I know or what's the past is. I'm sharing from real live experience. And I mean, I've been around when we've had market shifts. You know, we often hear people saying, well, I've been around 7 years, 8 years. Well, the last 7, 8 years have been pretty fantastic. You know, they're pretty great years. And before that, there were some moments where we've had some struggles. And I think it's important to understand that what's happening, as much as it's unfortunate, you know, things that have been put on us from government has happened before and impacted our markets. So happy to share what I've learned along the way and what I believe will work today.
Does this, with Trump's tariff war, does this feel like a different type of market than you've dealt with?
Not necessarily. You know, we've had different things. Like there were deadlines, you know, when HST was coming into play. That was a huge thing. It made a lot of different impacts throughout. But we had a deadline with that one. But other like lending, right now, lending is obviously tighter. We've seen job loss. I mean, my population in my area is 20,000 people. So when a car manufacturing things changed and, you know, prices and everything that was going on between US and Canada back then, we had local factories closed that employed, you know, 1,000 people. In Barrie, I remember when General Tire closed. I mean, those things will have significant impacts on a really high level in your local trading market. So this is, of course, in fact, impacting all of us. And it's different because it's kind of feels a bit like an attack against Canada with our, you know, favorite neighbor. So it's definitely different in that regard. But as far as talking about real estate, which is what we're doing and the impact on it, this is not unusual to be feeling what we're feeling.
Let's talk about that. How have Trump's tariffs impacted the Toronto real estate market? And are we seeing immediate effects or do you think the effects will be long term?
Well, I definitely feel that over the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's settling into everyone that there's a reality that these decisions that he's making is going to impact, you know, our economy. It's going to impact our jobs, it's going to impact the cost of new homes, renovations. You know, it's going to have a ripple effect. And I think people are starting to feel that a little bit more. I mean, we've all been feeling the inflationary cost and how everything's costing more and more every day. But this is going to impact perhaps a livelihood, you know, and I think everyone's like, oh, well, I can go to work and I can make more money. But with this, what's going to happen to jobs? And I think that's starting to seep into people's minds more and more. And I mean, I do have some clients that have already been impacted from it. You know, they're working a 4-day week instead of 5 because they're in automotive and there's already parts not coming across, or people just adjusting for the 25%. I think the biggest thing to realize always is with everything good that happens or bad that happens, there's an opposite effect. And I think that's something we need to focus on. Like, what is the opportunity from what's occurring? And
have you managed to glean what the opportunity might be?
There's a lot of different things. I mean, right now, one of the biggest opportunities is when things like this are happening, it impacts higher prices. So we're going to see it a little bit in waterfronts. I think the prices of a secondary home or recreation or luxury is getting impacted a little bit more. And in our particular, like in a different trading areas, right now in our area, anything over $1 million has taken a larger hit than anything below. So what I mean by that is if in 2022 when prices were at their peak, You know, a $750,000 house then is $600,000 today. A $1.8 million home is $1.2 million today. So now is such an amazing time to upgrade. Also, because of what's happening, a lot of people are kind of hoarding their money a little bit as far as investors go, and they're not in the market right now. So that makes duplexes, triplexes, like all those smaller multifamily units where people can come together and live, or first-time homebuyers can get into the market with an income happening. There's not the same competition with them. So I feel that that's an opportunity that's presented itself in this market that I've never seen before. Normally, if prices drop, they drop 20%, but it's lower on the smaller, on lower pricing, and it's higher on the higher pricing.
Right. So that disproportionality, I think, is something that could be taken advantage of. I think for the agents as well as the clients, like the agents have the opportunity now to reach out. And this is not something that people are talking about. So for an agent to reach out to their clients and say, I know everything kind of looks like it's going to hell, but there are opportunities here. Let me kind of present them to you. Getting back to sort of how house prices have been, or house sales have been affected directly. According to Treb, home sales in the GTA decreased by 28.5% in February compared to January. Is that sort of par for the course, just a regular fluctuation? And how much of this do you think can be attributed to the trade tensions?
I would believe that quite a bit of it could be attributed, but we also had some really unusual weather in the month of February. And, that's a Canadian thing. We had more snow up here and across all of Ontario. In our area, it was more snow than I've seen in my lifetime. We had 17 feet of snow. We had 17 days of snow in a row. We had 21 snow days for schools. Like, I don't remember ever getting 21 days off in the wintertime because of, school buses being canceled and that sort of thing. So I think there's a few more things there that are at play. And I do believe that a lot of people like to put a lot of news out there that are, bad news sells, right? Yeah. So fear, people buy into that fear part of it. And I'm not saying that everything's rosy. I do feel that jobs are going to be impacted. And I definitely, I feel bad for those people that are going to have that happen. But maybe there's an opportunity right now to shift even that. Like, what other opportunities in the work world are there that's maybe not automotive? And maybe you can look for a new opportunity instead of sitting there waiting for it to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Suggestion.
I want to look at something pretty specific that's happening as it pertains to the trade war, but how I think it's sort of a specific look and focus on everything that's happening, but its effects, I think, could be fairly ubiquitous. So specifically looking at the steel and aluminum tariffs. First off, looking at the new developments in Toronto, how do you anticipate that those tariffs on those materials are going to affect new construction? Do you think it's going to slow down because of that?
Well, I believe it's already slowed down just because of the condominiums that we already have. We have a lot of condos that have been built on speculation, and I think that's even a bigger factor in all of this. I mean, to be clear, I'm not a politician. Right. As far as the actual, I'm not, in charge of financials for the government. So as far as, I'm obviously following it all, but I'm just looking at it from somebody who sells a few hundred homes a year and cares deeply about, our country, our investments, and real estate in a whole, and the people that it's impacting. So when you ask specifically about aluminum and steel, from my experience, every time something like this is on the verge, anybody building right now would automatically think, okay, I have to increase my cost by 25%. So that's getting compounded by the fact that, like, I built a few apartment buildings, smaller units, during COVID, and my expenses had gone up 30%. You get a price on a roof right now, and something that was $10,000 is $20,000. If it's a steel roof, it was 20 and now it's 45. Everything has gone up already. So I believe people are very much aware that this could be a significant increase. And I don't know, if I was quoting something or looking to build something, over the next 2 years, I'd be adding 25% today to the cost just to give it a buffer. So you're definitely going to see that. But there is a lot of standing inventory out there to go purchase.
Okay, so that was actually my follow-up question is looking at what this means for everything else. What does that mean for supply and affordability for the rest of the GTA housing?
Well, I think it's one of those things. Fear is going to have other people not make decisions, right? So if there's less people buying, it's going to give you, if you're buying, a better opportunity. If you're looking to sell I always say it all boils down to this. If you're looking to sell and buy in the same market, then you know the numbers, you know what's happening. If you're looking to sell right now because you're cashing out and you're going to go rent or something, why are you selling? Are you, is your house up to par? Like, are you doing everything you can to get the most money for it so that you are maximizing in this market and, position yourself properly? But that other part of, things are doom and gloom and, we don't know what's going to happen and people are starting to get afraid. Maybe I shouldn't buy. Other people are just going to seize opportunities in this market. So I think it's a choice as to how you're going to view things and what opportunities you're going to look for.
You're a pretty water is half full type of person, hey?
Yeah, I guess I keep going to that, but I really am. I think that there's always something going on in the world that's not great news, but I don't know. I look at it and think there's a part of this where, our country is coming together. There are more Canadian flags hanging and, in properties, just regular people's homes, business, or whatever. There's just more pride happening. And I think that's a good thing. So yeah, maybe I am just I don't even believe that the glass is half full. I think there's another pitcher on the counter that we could go get and keep pouring some because yeah, there's opportunity.
Right.
And I think my mindset is very much, again, I'm not a delusional. I do understand that there's stuff going on. I'm not putting my head in the sand and ignoring it. I'm following it. But at the same time, as much as this is happening, it's like, what's the opportunity that's presenting that somebody could take advantage of in this situation?
So something else interesting happened with BMO, and I don't think enough people really are talking about it. So BMO lowered their total debt service ratio, TDSR, from 44 to 42%. For business owners in steel and aluminum industries. So basically they're allowed to borrow less money. And that's because they've deemed these industries as high risk, most likely because of the tariffs. My question to you is, could this be the start of broader lending restrictions in response to the Trump tariffs? And if so, do you think that this could start to leak into other industries as well?
So, we've struggled over the last few years when it came to interest rates, right? Interest rates went up and everybody panicked because the rates went up. What people don't realize is when the interest rates go up, the lending tightens anyway, right? There's times when it's great to be self-employed and get a mortgage, and there's times when it's not. There's times when they're giving money to everyone, and there's times where, unless you don't need the money, they're not giving you the money. So I think that hearing some of those things, like that BMO is doing that, I believe the difference is you're just hearing about it. It's always been happening. Ever since, if there's any fear in the economy at all, the banks are going to tighten things up because it's just risk management, right? Before that, they were increasing. We had that, the wonderful stress test because the market was supposed to crash. So they were preparing for it. And then now, as the interest rates went up, the market went up, there was so many different things happening that they just started to tighten their lending. And I think that that's always the case. And I don't think people are aware, but from my experience, I've had people go into a bank. I'll never forget this one client. They were with the bank for 40 years. They had a great relationship with them. They went in to get pre-approved and then they kind of ghosted me, right? They weren't replying anymore. And I thought, what's going on? Like, I know these people well. So I finally kind of, face to face, got them to tell me what was going on. And they went to the bank and they got turned down. They got declined. And the girl at the bank said, wow, your credit cards and stuff are a little bit high. So maybe you should think about paying those off before you apply for a mortgage. Like, really, I don't know if upgrading at this time is the best move for you financially. And she was so embarrassed and humiliated and thought, wow, I've never had anybody at the bank tell me something like that before. And I said, well, which bank did you go to? And she told me, and I said, oh my gosh, like I know for a fact through my mortgage broker that they're the worst ones to lend right now because they've already lent out the majority of their money. There's still a month left. So they've tightened, like the bank itself has tightened their lending policies just because of where they're at. We took them across the road, went to a different bank basically, and got them approved in a few hours. Like they were incredible clients. It was silly, but people don't know that, just like the value of a great real estate agent that's experienced, a great mortgage specialist. A lot of people call them mortgage brokers, but I think of them as a mortgage specialist. They know what's happening. They got their pulse on it. Then they know which bank is doing what and which one will accept, where you're at in your life or your career, in this case, what you do for a living. and who's more open to lending you the money that you need.
Okay, so I think that that's actually a great example of the next question, is being that mortgage qualifications are becoming more difficult, and in the story that you just told, mortgage qualification was more difficult, particularly for that bank. How can realtors put themselves in a position to advise their clients differently and to provide value where it may not be so obvious as to where the value is that can be provided?
I think right off the bat is to share stories like I just did. Like, hey, just so understand that you're going to go to the bank that you dealt with for years, but we've had this and we have had it multiple times, and you can use my experience. We've seen it all multiple times where people have gone to the bank that they've dealt with for years, and maybe that particular bank has a different lending policy this week, right? This month, this year, whatever it is. And another bank's going to be more flexible. It doesn't mean that, you're not a good candidate. So if you get declined for some reason, and trust me, this may happen, so don't feel embarrassed. You have to set it up. But if that's what you're looking to do because you have that relationship with them, go ahead. However, I don't know, I think it makes sense to speak to a mortgage specialist either directly, because they can still, you don't have to change banks. If you get your mortgage, if you're with CIBC and you get a new mortgage at Scotiabank can take the money out of your other account. Sometimes they'll offer you opportunities that if you do transfer over, they'll take your rate down and negotiate a special for you, which you may actually think is a great opportunity for you, right? Everybody wants to save money or make money, so maybe that works. But I think it's understanding and setting your client up for that, and then understand what your mortgage specialist is actually capable of.
Right.
I've had people over the years, I remember that one of my agents years ago, I'm like, what happened? That's 2 deals that you had fall through on financing. And this was before COVID. So, it wasn't cash offer time. They were conditional. And he had 2 deals fall through. And I said, well, what happened? I don't understand. And he said, what do you mean? I said, are you still using so-and-so? And he said, well, no, I'm using this new gal, blah, blah. And I found out he was dating her. And he had these 2 deals fall through. And, she was giving him a kickback through her branch so that they'd get this gift card. And they were using that for their dinner dates. I'm like, so you refer them, you get a card. He goes, yeah. I said, but then you don't do the deal. Like, how much is this actually costing you and costing the team, right? Now we have 2 deals out there that didn't firm up on financing. So how much trust do people have in our offers now? Like, not good. So find a great mortgage specialist. Make sure you know who they are, what the success rate is, and I don't know, give them a shot.
Before I came into the world of real estate, I was in advertising, and usually in advertising, the way that it works, particularly in the creative side of things, there's a copywriter who writes the copy, obviously, and then there's an art director who does the visual creativity. And in most top advertising agencies, the copywriter and the art director, although they technically have two separate job descriptions, really one is a wordsmith and one is a visually whatever inclined person. But they really do work together as a team, and they're not that they're useless, but they are definitely worth more than the sum of their parts. And something that I never really understood is how it's not the default that real estate agents and mortgage specialists, mortgage brokers, mortgage agents work more in tandem together. Now, even if the business necessarily, because you can't mandate that somebody works with your mortgage broker, obviously. So even if the business doesn't always necessarily go to this agent or that mortgage broker, that's fine. The point is that a plan comes together not just through those 2 sources, through real estate and mortgages, but those are the kind of the first 2 ingredients. Like, that's the salt and pepper. And it's crazy for me how the mortgage broker you work with is not of the most importance. The way that you market yourself with them isn't something that people think about. Like, running webinars isn't something that people care to do. It just doesn't really make sense to me. Like, if I'm looking to buy a home, for example, and I'm scared in these turbulent times, and I call an agent, and the agent says, yeah, give this person a call and see what you qualify for. And I got to call. Like, there's too many steps. There's too many unknowns. Really, it's like, let me hold your hand. Let me walk you to this person. They'll take care of you. I'll explain your situation to them. And that tag team, I think, in the same way that a copywriter and an art director can make things happen because they work together like that, I think that has to be the default in real estate as well.
So I agree with that, but I think it's even bigger than that, Oliver. I don't think people understand the difference, right? Everybody, before people would know 1 or 2 real estate agents. Now I say they know a dozen, and they don't know the difference. So it's so much bigger than just the mortgage specialist. It's the lawyer. The lawyer is going to make a huge difference on the deal coming together or not as well. Financial planner, right? Sometimes explaining to somebody that it makes sense to sell their apartment building because if they invested it in this, they could get more money. Like right now, the bank was paying 5.5 on a GIC. Now you're lucky if you can get 3 on it. So it's like there's so much knowledge and there's so many relationships that can completely make the difference of what you said. You reach out to a real estate agent, I want to buy a house, right? How many times do you get a call from a buyer that's looking at properties or a text or an email and they already have an agent? And I'm thinking, why are you doing this work? Why isn't your agent doing this for you? There's more resources than realtor.ca to find a house. So I think it's so much bigger than that. Just like the great mortgage specialist, agents, a great real estate agent knows different ways that a property can be financed. They understand that if you're self-employed or if you're in this trade or if you have this credit issue, that there are options. They know things like, hey, if you do this other way of lending, I can sell you a house that needs work and then I can get you the money to fix it, all tied into that first mortgage at a great interest rate. So don't be afraid of that house that you hate the kitchen in and needs new shingles, because we can make that happen. And you're actually going to build equity because you could buy a cheaper house that you spend the money on and now you get to benefit from it without having to go through the refinance process. So I just rambled on all of that, but it's really important to understand the difference between somebody who has the experience, who's doing deals, multiple deals every single week, and has those relationships to get people from where they are today to where they want to be.
One of the questions I wanted to ask is specifically how realtors can help their clients navigate uncertainty and make good decisions amidst the economic concerns, everything going on. I think what you've just drawn out is a strategy where it's get on the same page as everybody on your team, because you're seeing things differently than your mortgage agent is seeing, and he's seeing things differently than the lawyer may be seeing things. So to understand the challenges that arise at every single step of the way and create a marketing strategy, as it were, that starts with, instead of here's what I do, it starts with this is what's happening to you. And it sucks. But the reality is that there's a way around it. You can fix that. So I think even by leveraging your team, not only for the quality of service, 100% for sure, but just their expertise and say, why are people distressed when they come to you? How do we get together all of the data and insights that we're gathering? How do we aggregate them to create a really compelling marketing strategy that starts with the pain? Because that's where action happens.
100%. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to just ask people, what do you know that I don't know or that the industry doesn't know? Right? Unbelievable, the secrets that you hear from that. Or what's happening in your market today? What's the pain? I had 2 meetings last week with people that work in the banking level. They're face-to-face with my clients, because I asked this question. I think this is important. Who has my clients before I get them?
Love that. Oh my God, I love that. That's a question that I ask realtors. Where are your clients now? How can you get them as early on in their process? Please proceed. I'm in love with this. Go on.
Right? So whenever I know that, I'm like, okay, well, right now they're talking to the bank. So what's happening at the bank level? I go out for a couple lunches, dinners, whatever, we chat. I found out that people are cashing in RSPs and cashing in their GICs to pay for their bills right now. They're struggling with that. You talk to property rental businesses, or management companies, and parents are applying for their kids to try to find them rentals because they're still living at home. They can't find anything. We see a trend of parents buying homes that have apartments because they have their parents living with them and their children living with them. So that is finally starting to happen. So it's understanding who has your clients, what are they struggling with, and how can you work together and provide a solution. Like I come up with those often for them. I've even had conversations with banks saying, like, there are other people that can finance. Like, if you turn someone down and you feel really, really bad that they've been with your bank for 30 years and they're lovely people, but your bank policy is making it difficult, reach out and I'll connect you to my mortgage specialist, right? So we're still helping people. And by offering that, often they make you a resource. I had a deal the other day that we were struggling. We had it was just a tough deal. Other agent was from out of town. There was a lot of moving pieces, and the lawyer was a newer lawyer. And I just said, hey, this is because I reach out before the deal closes. I want to know what's happening. I'm involved in the solution. I don't just hand the deal off to them. I think that's really important. I think we make a lot more money than a lawyer does on every transaction, and we should show up and deliver and assist if there's an issue. So we were going through the problems. I said, okay, well, here's what I would suggest, or here's what I've done in the past and why. And I just shared with them. And I said, hey, if you're ever working on a deal and you have something going on with the agent on the other side, if you want to reach out and say, hey, I'm trying to communicate with this agent, I'm not getting anywhere, can you give me any advice on it? he was like, what, really? Like, I'd love that. So now he's reaching out and asking, and I said, I don't need to know the deal. I don't need to know the agent's name, just what's happening so I can give you the agent side of it. And he's like, well, if you ever need a lawyer's side of it, reach out, right? So that's those relationships between all of them where, I don't know, I'm big on add value. Teach people what they don't know, so you can help them get to where they want to go.
Beautiful. Literally could not have said a word of that better myself. As we're kind of reaching the end, I try to keep all episodes under 30 minutes, so I think we're kind of getting to the end of this right now. Looking forward, how long do you think, and this might just be a guess or a prediction, how long do you think these tariffs will be impacting the Toronto housing market, and what specifically do you think we should be watching out for?
I think it's the tariffs, and it's a lot of other moving parts, right? I mean, the stock market's been interesting. There's a lot going on. And I mean, we had record breaking number of sales, price increase. We've experienced a lot over the years. Right now, my advice to people is either you're selling now because, the market's, it's hard to say, right? Right now, some people are saying it's a stable market. If you look at the trend lines in Canada, we still are 19% price-wise above where we should be according to the trend line of the typical 4% increase per year. So there's still some opportunity there that could get adjusted. Now, everybody keeps talking about the housing shortage, which gives us hope that because there's a shortage of homes, that could help stabilize. But it depends how many people all stay in the same home, how that's going to impact the future and the housing shortage. So in my opinion, you're either selling now because we never know when the bottom's going to be, or if you're waiting for prices to go back up, my forecast is it's going to be 4 to 5 years before it's back up or above where we are today. So if you didn't sell in 2022 and you're like, oh, I don't want to sell for this price now because I still want my 2022 price, my opinion is that's 5 years away, because the tariffs they're going to wreak havoc a little bit. They're going to create some uncertainty. They're going to have some people not come to market. But I believe that the opportunist ones will see the opportunity. They're going to have a more secured, probably not in the steel or aluminum business, unfortunately, automotive, some of those things. And they're going to take advantage of the fact that people are afraid and buy. And then those that want to upgrade because things have been tight, they haven't been able to put offers conditional on selling their home, they're going to come to market and they're going to see the opportunities for them. So I always tell people it all depends where you're at, what your goals are, and meet with a great experienced agent that can share different angles of what they're experiencing with other people, give you different resources, different ideas. Like, I've been to a lot of homes where I didn't convince them to sell. It wasn't right for them. It didn't make sense. So it's understanding that relationship and doing what's right for you.
So if you were to leave our listeners or viewers with one piece of advice for them to stay ahead of all of the market changes and be able to keep their clients in the loop, what would your advice be?
I would say ask yourself who has your clients, build relationships with those people, learn from them, ask better questions. And I believe the next couple of years in real estate for a lot of real estate agents is going to be hard, right? It just is what it is. You need to speak to more people and you need to find their motivation sooner. Why are they selling? Do they need to sell? Why are they buying? Do they need to buy? If you're talking to someone that sold their house in, I don't know, I had one the other day. They sold their house in 2020. They're renting. They're just hunting for an extremely good deal. So are they motivated? Are they going to buy right away? It's going to be a long-term process? Maybe. So find the people that need help and get the resources from having those other conversations with people so that you know more and you can help.
Lorraine, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. Guys, if you want to stay ahead of all of the turbulence happening in this market, make sure to follow all of Lorraine's advice. I'm going to be posting all of Lorraine's information into the podcast description. If you are a realtor in Toronto, make sure to give us a follow and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next episode. Woohoo!